and continue their usefulness in other plantation fields. Basket making continued after slavery ended, and through the continual teaching from generation to generation, the tradition and craft continues to present day.
All right. They make baskets in here, guys. All of these baskets are handmade.
Baskets are still crafted with a variety of natural materials, ranging from sweetgrass, bulrush, strip palm fruits, and even if you just see all of these materials grow easily sourced. Baskets are woven.
So is this the like quilt that they found here? Like, is that like a really old original quilt? Or
I do not know the guy who kept talk. He can tell you more about that.
Depending on the style and size of the basket, the weaving process can take a few hours.
Well, you could come look at the photo if you want to.
Today,
She said you can go look at it.
oh, okay.
to source these raw materials due to continued land
I just want to look at it. Thank you, ma'am.
generations and generations of picking and pulling materials from certain areas. Many basket makers have become quite resourceful once again. Some basket makers have certain individuals collect the needed materials for their baskets, still source and create their baskets on their own.
Okay. Thank you so much for letting me see that.
So, what'd you see?
The quilt.
What about that?
I bet they probably used to live here. The people in the picture back there that are sitting in front of this cabin.
And I don't know how many families there were to a cabin.
Right.
I mean, there might have been 3 or 4 families. So you think all this is big, but it's not.
Okay, here's another one. We go inside.
Slaves were able to form families and communities within the plantation.
This is what a slave. Imagine this is, and I guess that there's rafters up there. The beds were up there. Just climb up there and go to bed. And just think about when the sun went down at like 5 o'clock, 5:30. They were climbing up there and going to bed. I'm thinking that's the loft they slept in.
Especially as kids. Showed up there. Yeah.
And their parents was probably down there. And this is their kitchen and living room area. No bigger than your average doghouse.
And they look, I mean, yeah, they're like, oh, this is nice, it's brick construction, but like I said, it was a byproduct of the fact that they made bricks here.
Mm-hmm. Did you get any thumbprints in the bricks like at the other plantation where they made bricks?
This was evidence that the slaves were going out at night and hunting, then eating the meat and burying the bones so they wouldn't be discovered. Analysis of the bones and cuts indicated that the slaves had a better diet than the master's family at the plantation.
Damn. Go ahead, slaves. I ain't mad at y'all.
This very cabin, the bones of various animals were also discovered below the floorboards. Research has uncovered many other interesting details pertaining to the slaves, and this cabin exhibits some of the research that has been done in and around these cabins. Another interesting discovery is how by the early 19th century, the slaves had taken on many ways of the Europeans. Understandably, this would have been inevitable, as by then many of the slaves were American-born and raised under the influence of their master. Also, most of their living supplies came from their master. This is evident by the discovery of ceramic fragments and other European imported items, such as cooking and eating utensils. The discoveries here at Boone Hall parallel much of the research that has been done and continues to be done at slave sites all over the U.S.
So this was their brick mold.
Guys, look. There's bottles and a plate. Sorry.
You can.
A lot of the bricks for Fort Sumter and Fort Monroe made right here.
Okay. Nice. But I bet if you look closely, you can find a thumbprint in some of these bricks, but they just probably haven't.
Yeah.
Like this could possibly be a fingerprint.
Yeah.
Depending on the job to be done, were assigned to each slave, and the slave was free
Look.
when that work was done to the driver's satisfaction. As one planter put it in his overseer's contract, a daily task load is the amount of work the average slave working industriously could accomplish in 10 hours. When slaves completed their task for the day, the rest of the time was theirs, although they still remained the property of their master. Boone Hall used a combination of two systems, depending on whether they were in the fields or maybe making bricks in the brickyard. Workers would spend 12 hours a day in the cotton fields and longer during harvest. Men, women, and children worked, with children considered half-hands until they were 12 years old. In the winter months, the slaves would make bricks in the brickyard, and Boone Hall's brick and slave labor constructed many buildings in Charleston. It became very commonplace for slaves to be hired out in Boone Hall, as well as other plantations for construction projects and other services in town. Because of the amount of work being done in town by slaves, Charleston developed a slave tag system and was the only urban area in the U.S. to have and use this system. Tags were required to be worn by the slaves whenever they were hired off property, and from 1783 to 1865, this tag system was enforced as a way to identify and tax the services of private slaves. On display in the slave cabin exhibiting archaeology,
They rebelled.
original slave tag was found.
So we might see, because he was from Charleston,
Okay.
and we might see his statue.
Okay.
Other research was commonplace. Some slave owners would administer severe punishments as an example to other slaves, especially if it was a captured runaway slave.
Did you see this thing?
Forms of punishment
The
would
manifest
include
on the wall right here?
dismemberment and sometimes even death.
That
However,
thing?
masters did realize the value of their slaves and resisted destroying
yeah.
what was considered their property. Not all masters were abusive. Some developed compassionate relationships with their slaves, but the relationship of master and slave still existed nevertheless. The South is often focused on most when it comes to slavery because it was the primary location of slavery.
It's just one.
Racial tensions were high, and an effort to completely segregate Negroes and limit their rights was in force. In 1886, many Southern states established Jim Crow laws, which lasted until 1965. These laws allowed for the legal segregation of blacks in society,
Thurgood Marshall.
segregating schools, businesses, public facilities, and transportation. It is true that individual activists for civil rights had been around since the days of slavery, but it wasn't until the 1950s and the development of electronic...
He won 29 out of 30 of the civil rights cases that he brought before the Supreme Court. He won 29 out of 30 of the cases that he brought. That's Rosa Parks. They're saying that she was Native American, though, and not black. But she could have been, but still. She could have been half and half. Cause she looked like Maria.
Yeah,
That's how Maria. That's how my grandma looked. She could have been half Native American, half black, black white. Cause her dad was mulatto. Her granddaddy was mulatto.
She looks like she's
That fact matter or the fact that she stood up to discrimination?
The fact that she stood up to discrimination. It wasn't me that dug. I was fine with her being black, but most people was like, she was actually Native American. You know how some people always come up with something and they gotta throw it. Are we gonna go to this last one or
No,
not?
I think we need to start walking to the house.
Okay.
Law. But remember, we haven't seen these last few.
Okay.
No, I mean,
So slaves actually walked these very grounds, doing their daily jobs and living in these.
their houses.
Yeah, like had little yards and stuff, and maybe had little gardens off to the side over there,
And like you were saying, they sometimes sneak out at night.
and hunt.